Okay, we're recording. This is John Doyle from Optics EQ with Chris Larmey. And Chris, how you doing? I mean, we're going to talk about this new kind of change we did to the Optics table call at Optics Edge. I think it's pretty cool. You had a lot of hand in authoring some of this stuff, so good to have you here. And
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
yeah, I really look forward to talking about it. I really think for horse players out there, many of you could really, this could really up your game. Some of the new features with the optics information, but also, this new kind of betting information that we built into it, or I helped you out in doing that. I think it can really sort of take your game to the next level from a betting perspective. So you've got all the optics information to handicap with, and now adding in some tools to help you make better bets. So, I'm really looking forward to kind of showing people what it can do and talk about how it can help take their game to the next level.
Yeah, just have some fun. And I think if you use the product, I think it'll help you become a better handicapper. I think it helps you educate you on how to handicap because it's all about odds and picking horses and trying to assess, are they a good bet or not, right? So that's really what we're trying to do. So
Yeah. From that
let's
next, I'm just going from picking winners to
yeah.
finding good bets. I mean, that's sort of going from, 101 to 102 in handicapping. You got to get past just trying to pick the winner and really move on to, okay, how do I make big bets based on my opinion?
Cool. So, we have this table to the right in the plot all the time. And, how is it different now? Okay. And really, I'm going to show you some things you can do with it. But it's really fully controllable now by you. It's sortable. You can sort, for instance, like if you want to sort by morning line, you want to sort by rating. I got a race up here that's going to come up pretty soon in Aqueduct Race 7. This is on Wednesday, April 23rd. But I mean, you could sort it any way you want. You can move columns around. Let's say if you just want to move things around, there's certain information. Let's say, you're really into what the plot label looks like. So you want to closer up. You could hide and also add fields. And then if you really get all screwed up and you want to kind of reset the table, you just click reset the table. If you don't care about the live odds, the double, all the stuff that we've added, which is good stuff, and I suggest you do it. If you don't like it, go back to standard table and you're back to where you came from. Another feature too with the plot, you remember, you can always slide down here and you see how it highlights the horses on the plot. But for instance, if you really kind of engage with the table now, you can collapse the plot and just have the table. So I thought that was kind of cool because we're just again trying to maximize the space, trying to get a lot of information, Chris, into like one spot. It's not always easy as it seems, right? So we're trying to give you as much information as possible, but present it in a way that you can handle it.
And
So
they can tailor it to, what is it? Everybody's going to have their own favorite pieces of information that they use, and nobody probably is going to use everything except for maybe
right,
John. But so this gives you the ability to kind of just zero in on what's the most useful for you, so it can be you get it done really quickly, and it's fun. It's fun.
it is fun. It's really we could do so many different iterations. We always had the speed, plot, and class labels, which I thought were easy. And really, when I think of speed, plot, and class, I'm just thinking capability, Chris. So that means horse is capable in these things. Doesn't mean that he's going to run that way today because that's where form trying to dictate where how form cycle works and is the horse coming into a good race. But just on a capability standpoint, it's a great gauge. So one of the things that we did add was we kind of averaged the speed, plot, and class. And when I talk about plot, that's just trying to assess horses in certain quadrants and shapes, how they fare with this track race profile. It doesn't mean, it doesn't get into the dynamics of the race, but it's just a statistic. But when you look at average, the speed, we take the speed, the plot, and the class, kind of average it. And we came up with this thing called optics trimetrics, which is a combination. So you can sort on that. And that kind of, it's almost like sorting on capability for the horses in this race. So, but again, you want to assess them in terms of form. And that's why we have the notes. Now, when you buy this for the plot, Chris, you don't get the keywords. You get the notes, grades, and the figures, but you don't get the keywords. That's separate. But if you do have notes, you get the keywords too, which is a great thing to kind of help you try to assess where a horse is in his form cycle and is he peaking or not. But this is a great way to just, get, hey, capability wise, maybe got these horses sorted in the way. I kind of go down, kind of compare their odds. I kind of look at their current form cycle, and I start tweaking around. And then I want to use this new feature called optics calculator, odds calculator, where I can actually rate horses myself and be able to assess them, and then automatically it creates a fair odds thing to me. And this is where you were instrumental in kind of building this, Chris. So I want, why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, the idea is it sort of forces you into a process where you have to assess each horse in the race, which you should probably do if you're really, really serious about making a bet on the race. And then based on your opinion, and John, maybe you can walk through how you rated each of these horses. Maybe we can walk through each of those horses and how you rated them and kind of what was thinking behind that. But the idea is you can rate each of the horses using the standard scale that we'll talk about, and then based on that, it'll create, based on your evaluation of each horse, what the fair odds would be. And by that we mean that price is about what would be a break-even bet long term. If you were to bet, so on that first horse, What's Up Bro, his fair odds are 4.39, or about 9-2. So at 9-2, he's kind of a break-even bet. It's not something you get excited about, but if your opinion is fairly accurate, if you made 1,000 bets like that, you'd break even in the long run. But what you're looking for is when the odds are telling you this horse is going to go off at above 9-2, hopefully significantly above 9-2. Then based on your opinion, that says this would be a good bet. So in this case, if we look at the live odds, they're 2.5 to 1 or 5 to 2. The morning line was 7 to 2, and the double odds, which are an estimate of what the off odds would be based on the will pays and the daily double. You can see that this horse, you're probably going to get less than the fair odds on that horse. So right. That tells you that's probably not. And you see that red edge that calculates a percent edge you have. And I think that's using the live odds. That's correct, right, John?
Yeah, using the live odds. Right now, we just have the double odds there for informational. So we kind of think of where the horse might go to in terms of odds finish up. At some point, we may have an option just to look at, the edge with the double odds. But right now, it's just based on the live odds, early morning line when you first start, and then live odds when they're available.
Yeah, and in this case, you can see the double odds are a little higher than live odds, but they're still not as high as you'd like them to be to make a bet. So this horse may float up above 5 to 2 by post time. And this, I don't know if this race already gone off, or is this probably
it's got about 5 minutes.
Okay,
you could just I just wanted to I sorted by rating. So like the highest rating is on the top. So the 4 is my highest rated horse, just essentially coming out of the similar race to these horses, but this horse got kicked back. And I'm looking for kind of an improvement. But, I really had no strong opinion. Obviously, you can see in this race, I got 4 win contenders in a 5-horse field. But so I didn't have a strong opinion, but I thought maybe the 4 could separate. But it doesn't look like, from an odds standpoint, I'm getting that big of a edge. But I am getting somewhat of an edge. So it's a hard race to play, but
yeah, it looks like more like if you were playing horizontals, you might lean heavily on that 4 horse, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You're not going to get a lot of value, but he's probably your best chance to get through on a small field. The other option, if you just look at the prices, there is one horse that's actually, might go off, a little bit higher than it is right now on the live odds. It's 3 to 1, the 6-horse War Stride. But his fair odds are about 9 to 2, but the double odds say he might float up to close to 5 to 1. So that would be the other horse you might consider. But at a glance, this is probably not a race where you'd make a win bet, because there really isn't value, and that's part of what this helps you determine is whether or not you should make a bet at all. Because a lot of times the best decision you make when it comes to betting is what races to pass. And typically those are races where you don't have an edge, because if you don't have an edge, you're probably not going to make money, at least not long term. You may cash a ticket, but if you keep making those sorts of bets in the long run, you come out behind. So that's a lot of the value of these numbers, that we're showing you on the left part of this screen. They're really helping you make good choices about what races to bet, and then if there is, looks like there's some value, what's the best way to bet it?
Yeah, and the other thing I think it does, it forces you to rate all the horses in a race, right? So much tendency is like, people get to a pick before they actually evaluate the entire field. So I think this forces you to kind of look at the field and then kind of put them in buckets. Again, I just want to go over what those ratings mean, right?
Yeah.
So we got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Those are different types of, and you can see it when you actually hover over it. It tells you what it means. Solid win contender, typically 1 to 3 per race. Tier 3, that's a chance to win if tier 1 and tier 2 contenders. A tier 1 contender is a horse it's, Chris always gives the example of Flightline. He's a tier 1 horse, right? So they're more rare. And then you feel really strong. You can really lean on them, single them, and those are horses that are most likely going to win at a very high percentage. Exacta, you're going to see exacta, you're going to see trifecta. When we put that there, that means that's the ceiling. We think that horse. We do not think that horse is a win contender. We're not even sure that horse is going to get an exacta, but we're just saying that's the ceiling for that horse. Same thing with a trifecta horse and a superfecta horse. And then obviously we have these other categories, toss and not running. So if you want to eliminate a horse because he's an MTO or something, that's the way to do it. We also have plus and minus, easy to click. So you got like plus, minus, and neutral. And that just gives you, within a particular category, you might want to tweak a horse. You think, okay, there's 3 tier 3 contenders maybe, but I think one's a little bit stronger than the other 2. So that's what those ratings are all about. Anything to add to the ratings, Chris?
Well, I would just say one of the good things of making those labels like exacta, try, and super, when you start thinking about how you bet the race, you want to make sure you bet it in a way that's consistent with your evaluation of each horse. So if you have a horse whose ceiling is the exacta, then you should never put that horse on any bet above that 2 slot. You should never be boxing it with some other horse where it's on top, because you've already decided that you don't think this horse is, the best it can do is hit the exacta. So why would you ever box it, and put it in that one position? So that kind of, if you use that and you exercise some discipline, so that if you have a trifecta or an exacta or a superfecta horse, you only make your bets, you don't put them any higher than you rated them, then you can save yourself some money and make more efficient bets. Get out of that just boxing 3 horses. And even though you think one of them is much more likely to win than the other 2, that's just not the smart way to bet it. If you think the other 2 horses probably can't do any better than second. So that's one way to help translate, what you do in terms of your assessment of the horses, and converting that into exotic bets. For instance, and in horizontals, you definitely wouldn't want to ever use a horse that you said is probably not ever going to do any better than, finish second. So there's no reason why you should ever be including that horse in any sort of horizontal bets, where the only way you cash is if they win. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Again, just trying to help you. A lot of people tell me anyway, and I think you probably heard this, John, I'm a good handicapper, but boy, am I lousy better. And so we're trying to help you be a better bettor by not telling you what to bet, but giving you some tools to help you figure out, based on your opinion, what you should be betting.
Yeah, and I think it will assess if you're a really good handicapper too, right? So are you rating these horses right? So the other thing we're doing, maybe this will be more long-term, but we are saving the information. So like when you go back the next day and let's say you want to go look at the races that you handicapped previously, the information will be in there. Let me give you an example. Like I handicapped Keeneland. This was on the 19th, and you see we get the finish position, the actual grade of the horse, and then my ratings for that race. You see, happened to get this race right. We had a fair odds of 3.64 on that horse. Anyway, these things get stored so you can go back and look at them. And then I think because we have them stored long term, what you'll be able to do is to analyze the information, like how well am I doing with a particular race type or what have you. The information will be there. So if you do the handicapping, the information will always be there, and you can down the road we can do a lot of things with it.
But even now, you could go back and see, is there a horse that won that I tossed, or I rated as superfecta or whatever?
Right.
What did I miss? Or what? Sometimes it's just random. But you know what? I didn't notice that horse really plotted well or something. You can see, and you can file that away, and maybe the next time you run across a horse like that, you'll rate it a little more highly. Or maybe you rate it as like a lone 2, and it ran off the board. What did I miss there? Again, sometimes the favorite runs off the board, and there's no way you can really predict it. But sometimes you might have missed something. Oh yeah, you know what? I should have noticed that. And you can file that away. And that's like John said, that feedback really, because you've gone through the discipline of rating every horse, you can get a lot of good feedback if you go back and look at the results that you would never get if you just you're looking at and just firing away without really writing anything down or keeping track of what you bet and how you rated the horses. This gives you the way to do that really easily. You just go back the next day and check out the results that you bet and learn from that, and that'll
Exactly.
probably be the best lesson you'll ever have on handicapping.
Yeah, it's just kind of iteration, right? That's how you get better. Just kind of going through it and having the data there in so that you can do it. So having it accessible, having it in a format you can use is really important, instead of just kind of writing things randomly down and scratching them off and marking them up. This will be there forever for all of time. So it's a really important thing. So the other thing, I was just thinking, Chris, too, long term too, is because people are doing the ratings, one of the things you might be able to want to do, and as we iterate, right? Because that's how we do things. We give it to users, let them figure things out, give us feedback. But one of the other things I was thinking about, if you're trying to share this with a friend, maybe there's a concept of actually sharing ratings, or looking at someone else's ratings and sharing them, or doing something like that is another possibility. I mean, it becomes like endless of what you can do. We've talked about actually some simple betting rules based on your rating versus the live odds. And so maybe, for instance, in the case of like this example, maybe there's maybe not a win bet, maybe there's an exacta bet, maybe there's a horizontal bet. We haven't kind of worked that out, but those,
or maybe there's no bet. Again, sometimes you just want to pass. And usually a 5-horse field, it's hard to find value in a race like that.
Exactly. So those are lots of the things that you can do down the road, and because it's just it's there. So I just think going through the discipline of rating horses will do you so much good, because then you'll see, like, maybe I'm not as good a handicapper as I think I am, or maybe I need to improve, and maybe this will help us tell me what areas I probably need to improve. The information I said, like it's there. I mean, the notes, some great stuff, the alerts, and we're just going to kind of keep on expanding on some of this too. I'm trying to come up with something more like from a form standpoint. Form is so hard to kind of handicap. It's more subjective, but at least you have the notes there and the grades, which are a great thing. Trying to incorporate them into this object metric, which is kind of more, like I said, a capability rating than anything else. But at least it's something's there. You can just do whatever you want. Let's just.
Well, just so one note, like on the optics notes, right?
Yeah.
That's information that only optics users have. So not a lot of the players out there that you're competing against don't have that information. And that, you can always come up with, your ratings. But if you're rating a horse highly because it's fast, it's clearly faster than the other horses from a speed perspective, you're probably not going to get find value that way, because everybody has access to some kind of speed ratings, and those horses that are kind of clearly superior on speed, you're not going to find races that you're getting a great price on, and that when we start looking at the fair odds versus the live odds. But if you find a horse that's got hidden form and you can see that through the optics notes, then you're much more likely to find a horse that way that might actually be paying more than your fair odds line. So, I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind, is it's not only just picking the winners, but trying to find value. And one of the ways you find value with optics is you've got information like from the plot and the notes that most players don't have access to. And that's, if you can find a horse that looks better on the plot than maybe it looks on the speed ratings, or again, looks better through some of the notes, some trip issues with around trips and things, that than it would look just based on its speed ratings. That's where you can start finding value, and that you'll find that as you start doing this and you rate horses and you compare the live odds to the fair odds, you'll find that what kinds of horses are typically the ones that are going to end up being bettable based on the odds, and you'll start getting a better feel for what sort of information everybody else is incorporating as well, and also what information you can use to kind of separate yourself from the crowd. And I think that's where optics really helps, because it has some unique proprietary info that others don't.
Yeah, and I just want to talk, because we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years with notes at least. It's consistent. We measure it. So when we come up and tell you, a green keyword is good, is because we measure it. Like, for instance, in kickback and trouble plus and stuff like that. And what we're trying to do so much is not describe a trip, because you'll see trip notes that describe a trip. The horse was wide. We try to interpret a trip, right? So what we're trying to do is project, was that a good trip, bad trip? Is there room for improvement or not? As opposed to just describing it, because you could be wide on the course one day and that could be a good thing to be, and the next day it could be a bad thing. It all depends. You could, like, for instance, one day you could have like a covered up trip, and that might be good. Some days with kickback, that might not be the right trip to have, so it's all depending on interpreting what happened. And to do that, when we do our notes, we're actually looking at the past form of these horses too. Like, is this really the horse? Was the intent to win this race? Was he on the right surface? So we might project an equipment change, as you see here. We might project an improve, because if the horse gets back to the right distance, we may project a drop in class might be the right thing. So, and it's done by the same people who've been doing it for 6 or 7 years. That's one good thing. And there's really consistency there. So when we look at it analytically, we look at these numbers, we follow it. We make sure that we're not getting out of line. And I think it's the whole process is it's kind of like what they do in sports, I think, today with charting. Chris, I don't know if you know this, but because I've talked to some people, and I didn't realize they chart defenses, offensive players, and stuff like this for these fantasy leagues. And they provide this information. They would go about it, similar approach, because I explained it to them, and they go, "Oh, that's how we do things similarly." When we're doing this assessment of players and defenses and offenses, mainly football. So yeah, it's different. Like I said, it's unique. So to Chris's point, you got unique information that's helpful, and it's good information.
Yeah, and the red keywords can be even more valuable than the green keywords, especially if you're trying to find a weak favorite, which is always your best friend as a person betting on horses. If you can fade that favorite, you can really cash in on the race. So if you've got a favorite that looks fast, but you can see a bunch of red keywords in its last few races, because it had, a setup or loan speed or whatever, and you think, based on today's field, it might not get that same trip again, then all of a sudden, again, you have value. It's a negative kind of thing, but that's just as valuable, sometimes more so than a horse that has, some green keywords.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you're looking at, to Chris' point, you got green, red, yellow, right? They all kind of mean something. Green is good, lighter green, darker green's the best, darker red's the worst, and then kind of yellow and the grays are neutral. The other thing is you could hover over information and find numbers. Like, for instance, on the race class, the higher the number, the better on the race class. You could hover over the metrics here, so you can get an idea, which horse's higher number is better. So sometimes you can look at a field. Let's sort this, and you can see if, again, this field was very close. You can see the numbers are close. There's no horse that's got to really kind of distinguish himself. They're all average plus and an average minus, and then you got the one horse that's kind of below. So you can get a real gauge without having to kill yourself. There's a lot of information, and the way it's presented makes it useful, so that you can get to some answers quickly and spend more time on trying to assess the horse's form without having to say, well, is this horse good enough or not? You could tell kind of certain horses are good enough, or if they're well below in class, like this three horse here. you can make that assessment quickly. You don't have to go through a lot of hard work to do that. And again, these are all, based on information that's, is good. It's information that's, standard in terms of trying to figure these things out. The trick of this game is really, form, detecting where the form and where the intention of where the horse is suited today in the form, and then trying to figure out, is he a value or not? So that's what we try to do. And I think, there's everything you need there to kind of do that. In a game like this, you got kind of almost like two options there. You got the old kind of form way of looking at things, and then you got people with models. And this is kind of like an in-between approach. And it's, I think for people who are trying to move to the next level and understand that, who are not as sophisticated as, building and algorithms and models, but understand handicapping and want to take their game to the next level and do it more easily. We try to provide the tools that help you do that.
Yeah, and even if you can build a model, it's kind of boring to bet with a model, but it's a lot more fun to formulate your own opinion and then bet that opinion than it is to have some algorithm do it for you, or use somebody else's picks to bet. It's much more satisfying when you place a bet in cash, when it's based on your opinion and you feel like you saw how that race was going to unfold and it all worked out. That's just one of the best feelings you get. That's what brings many of us back to this game over and over again.
That's the hook, right?
Yes.
No doubt.
And so we want to make it as easy as possible for you to do that, and hopefully have some success and have that feeling, and want to, so you get eager to take a look at, I want to take a look at the next race and see, what's going to unfold, because it's fun. And I'm having some success. It's not quite as fun when you don't have success. So that's what we're trying to help you with.
Yeah. And so what we'll do is, like, we'll come back and do some, live races, maybe down the road here, some more demos, so you can kind of go through some iterations of this, get a feel for it, and see how we might rate horses. Races where we think a horse might be more dominant, races where we think we might upgrade a long shot for a reason, or what have you, what we're seeing versus maybe the public based on some of the, information in notes and plot and so forth. So, it'll evolve. That's what we want to kind of do.
And then based on that opinion, make some good bets. And, just with the Kentucky Derby coming up, that's such a unique race with 20 horses. It's really confusing for people to figure out, what would be a good price on the horse that I like in this race. Well, if you use this tool and you rate every horse, it'll give you a sense for, what would be a good price. And you might be surprised at the fair odds lines that come out of this, because in a 20 horse field, it's pretty hard to find a horse that's really, likely to win a race 50% of the time. It doesn't come up very often in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, this is the plot. You see there's no surface distance plot because these horses have never been a surface and distance. We don't have ratings on the two Japanese horses. They kind of stand out here, but, that's the plot. We could do, when we come back, I'm going to probably do a little preview on the plot in the next day or two to kind of get you a feel for what to look for in the plot on a Derby, because it's a little unique. And then to Chris's point, one of the things I did was, we still have the sort, by the way, it carries. So, I was sorted on this, so it stays that way as I go from race to race. So if you want to change it, you want to sort by number, or whatever you want to sort by, or whatever your sort is. So I got this kind of sorted on capability. And I noticed kind of like the Santa Anita horses kind of popped to the top on this because of how fast, I guess, they raced in the Santa Anita Derby, and at least on our numbers here. So, but yeah, so you just can go down and, like Chris said, look at all this ton of information. Horse like Sovereignty, I noticed we have this, looks like this horse, based on our notes, is kind of crying out for more distance. So he's kind of interesting when you talk about the Derby and all going a mile and a quarter for the first time, where, the horse next to him there, shorter. Now, this is It's still preliminary. We don't have the full field yet. So this will all change. The numbers will change. The plot will change. So, but at least gives you an idea. You can start kind of doing a little bit handicapping early on. And we're going to have focus for this race. So we'll have our assessment in focus. Let me just point that out to you so you can see what focus looks like. Chris does some of our focus races too. He does a good job for us. Let's see, focus. And then you can kind of look at some of the races here. And this, we give you kind of what we assess the race, kind of a label. Is it a playable race? How you should maybe wager the race. This will all be there for the Derby. We're going to do at least the 6 races in the pick 6, if not more, both on Oaks and Derby Day. If you want to take a look at that and buy the package, you go to just kind of go to our homepage, opticseq.com, and you can just click that or just go to buy. It'll be there too. So we have 3 packages, just the Derby Day, Derby and Oaks Day, and then if you want the Triple Crown, it's a little bit discounted. You get the Oaks, the Derby, and then the Preakness and the Belmont. So all that information, the plot, calculator, the horse calculator. We talked about focus. It's a pretty rich product for those days. And you get the tracks that are running those days. You don't just get Churchill Downs. So if you play other tracks, New York, California, whatever, you get those tracks included. Okay. So, so looking forward to that. Looking forward to doing some more of these things with Chris. Been a great partner through this. He's done a great job. And I think that's it for now, Chris. Anything else?
Yeah, just give it a try. If it's new to you, it always takes some getting used to, but I think you'll find it pretty easy to understand the information once you get used to it, and then to use that to form an opinion and rate every horse, and then try try using it prior to the race as the odds change and the live odds come in, and you can assess how your fair odds line compares to the odds board, and then start making some decisions about what to bet and what races to play. And I think it can really take your game up a notch if you haven't ever done anything like this, or you don't really have a process that you repeat race to race. It forces you to kind of look through the entire field and rate every horse. I think it's not that hard to do. You can do it quickly, and it really will help improve. I think it'll make it more fun, and it will improve your results.
Yeah, you know what, too? Because I do this too. Like if I walk in, I just look at a race, I may have an opinion looking at the board quickly. I'll just go down and rate the race right there, Chris, because you just go right down the race and try to rate it. You looking at the live odds. No, sometimes I do that just to kind of like, I think I have an opinion on one of these horses, but I don't stop there. I go down and just kind of quickly rate the race, look at the odds, and just thinking where I might have an edge, and boom. It doesn't take, I mean, if you really want to do it that way, sometimes I do it live. It takes me more than a minute or two. So, it's there. You can use it any which way. You'll find ways, and hopefully give us ideas on how to improve it or use it too. So thanks for listening. And again, stay tuned. More of this to come, and more kind of the product to evolve over time. Thank you.